The ability for us to ensure that the country is postured to compete with the rest of the world requires a vibrant minority business base. The vibrancy of the base is not really at question. The ability of that base to grow at scale and be truly braided into the economy of the country is the problem that we're working against right now.
All right, guys, welcome to Financial Freestyle here on Yahoo Finance. I'm your boy, Ross Mack. Now, look, guys, whether you're a professional on Wall Street, a retail investor, or someone that's looking to improve their overall financial situation, there's always a first step you got to take. And guys, look no further, because I'm speaking to some of the most influential people in finance and learning about their path to economic prosperity. And guys, today's no different. I'm sitting down with Deputy Undersecretary of Commerce for Minority Business Development, Eric Morset. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
My man, thank you so much for coming, man. I think that, one, what you do is remarkable. So obviously we talked a little bit off camera, but I think it's important that the world knows, who is Eric Morset?
Yeah, I work for y'all, is the short of it.
I love that.
I'm from Brooklyn. I grew up here, and I've been fortunate to spend my entire professional life in public service. I've had some interesting careers. My mom would tell me that I can't keep a job in some ways, but I think it's all been towards moving minority businesses, our country forward. I've been fortunate to work for Senator Schumer out of New York in D.C. There's a point that I was covering all the policy areas for including economic development. I was fortunate enough to work for the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, fortunate enough to work as an economic analyst for the CIA, run a subcommittee in financial services within the U.S. House of Representatives, and then go over to Commerce. We've been fortunate to now run the Minority Business Development Agency, an agency that I help to work to codify. So I'm very fortunate. I'm blessed.
I mean, that's a very strong resume. So one, thank you for the service you do. So what actually brings you to New York?
What brings me to New York is the ability to lift up some of the work that we have going on here in the area. We were fortunate enough to have some time with the NASDAQ, on the NASDAQ big board to highlight our capital readiness program. This program is a part of a $10 billion capital investment by the U.S. Department of Treasury. We know that amount of money is a lot for a lot of people. It's focused on growing small businesses, on minority businesses, but getting access to that capital is something that our communities have a hard time with at times. So we, as a minority business development agency, are focused on providing free access to that capital and all forms of capital. So we competed and awarded 43 awards to grantees that are focused on helping minority businesses, small businesses in this country access to that $10 billion pool of capital that is theirs and all other forms of capital based on their needs.
So I think in this country, right, you need access to capital, right? I've had some amazing conversations with whether it's, bank CEOs, people that work at banks, people that are, in government. So when you talk about getting access to capital, right, I understand that, one, you helped pass the 2021, the Minority Business Development Act, right? So one, what is that? And, let's actually talk about that.
Sure. So the Minority Business Development Act was passed in that time, because it was in the midst of the pandemic and the aftermath of the pandemic, because we realized that the pandemic was hitting our communities of color, minority businesses, differently than other parts of this country. But MBDA as an agency has been around for 55 years. We were founded under the Nixon administration. The codification of the agency, growing our network, we have over 131 minority business centers around this country, one in every state in this country and the territories, provide free services to minority businesses so they can grow and scale their business and address those unique needs that minority businesses have. That's access to capital, contracts, and networks. Their job is to help businesses grow and scale at any phase of the continuum. But beyond that, we have to address the policy challenges that undergird the lack of access to capital. Like minority businesses in this country pay more for capital and get less of it. We know empirically that they are not getting the same access to federal contracts, state contracts, local contracts, business-to-business contractual opportunities, and the networking opportunities are just different for our communities. They don't have the same legacies and other things that other communities enjoy. My goal as a person who worked on this act is to address those at core. We have the ability to address this through our policy arm. We are working right now to complete a report to financial regulators to highlight all the areas in which they can better engage the regulated entities. Those are the financial institutions. Those are equity institutions. Those are private PE and VC capital firms and the like, to ensure that minority businesses in this country have better access through better regulations and the like. So we're trying to hit at that core.
Well, one, I love that, right? I think you'll have, potential people on the other side, right, of the aisle that would look at this and say, you know what, I think that by trying to provide access to capital for minorities, this might be taking capital away from, the majority, right? What do you say to those type of people?
I would say that doesn't it's not consistent with the way that our communities operate, but it's also not consistent with the law, right? The law says that our job and the job of this country is to make sure that free markets and markets that we are supposed to be enjoying are level markets. That everyone has access to those markets. Right now, the truth is our markets are not level. Because if a person of color that walks into a financial institution with the same financial statements, the same runs, the same kind of books, with another person who is not, they are less likely to access capital at the rates at which their majority counterpart are. And that means the markets are not working. That means our markets are not fair at this point. What people that I'm engaging with every single day are asking me for is equal access, not a handout. And that's the job of this agency, and that's the job of the federal government, not to put a thumb on the scale, but to remove the thumbs that are already on scales right now.
What's interesting is like there's statistics that show, right, that whether it's, Black-owned businesses, Hispanic-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, like it's just overall better for
That's right.
the economy. And, so there are statistics that would say to the people that actually are trying to be against what you're doing, like, hey, this is actually better for the greater good. And so I actually want to talk about, are there any success stories when it comes to some of the things you've been doing?
Yeah, I think you're hitting, if you talk about the stats that undergird this work, I can't help but think about the reason why so much of my time and energy is focused on it. Like the stats are overwhelming. Like over $8 trillion of our economy is left on the table by not pulling in minority businesses. $8 trillion is roughly 1/3 of the GDP output of the United States. So I told you before that I used to be an intelligence officer. I used to be a CIA officer. I spent a good portion of my time talking to folks about things that I could not talk about publicly. And now some of that high side stuff is now low side stuff. We know that our adversaries want to make sure that we're not as competitive as them, that we are sidelining that capital. And they know the wedges that divide our country. Racial divide's the real wedge. If we continue to foment that wedge and allow people to think that if I get some, you don't get some, then we are less competitive as a country. The idea of 1/3 of the GDP output of this country not being pulled in and plugged in is a competitiveness issue. And when I think about the successes that we see every single day as an agency, I realize that this is a very solvable problem. Among those successes are businesses that are creating real change for their communities, but beyond that, creating real jobs for people that they're serving and employing. We know empirically through our work that MBEs, which make up of roughly 11 million and are among the fastest growing despite those challenges in our marketplace, are employing more people who are along impoverished statistical metro areas and census tract locations. That means if we're thinking about how we can pull folks out of poverty, allow them an equal opportunity to create business and entrepreneurship for themselves, allow them free access to markets and the like. People can grow if they're able and free to grow. And I think that's what the beauty is of this agency. We're not giving anybody anything. We're trying to give people free, equal access to opportunity to pull themselves up.
And so when we speak about, access to capital, right, I also understand you have access to grants, right?
Yeah.
And so I just got a question, as a person that's watching this who has a, minority business, kind of what are the steps, would you say, right? Is it, just take us kind of from A to Z if you can.
Yeah. I think the first thing, if you are a business or if you have an idea to create a business, we have business centers probably in your area. Their entire job is to help you grow and scale your business. Find the capital that you need, find the resources that you need, but every business is different. So it's not the case that clearly I'm gonna go to this place and get this amount of money. Maybe your business is not eligible for that amount of money, But our business centers, which are graded against their ability to help you as an entrepreneur get access to capital, contracts, and grow your network, their entire job is to evaluate your business and help you get that capital. So the first step in my mind is always connect with the business center of ours. They are free. Their entire job is to help you get those contracts, get those grants, grow your network. Please go to them. The folks who are providing services to entrepreneurs are from the communities. So we go out there and we compete funding opportunities to say, who knows you better than the people who you live around, who are part of your community, and who are expert in economic business development and economic analysis and the like. We locate those folks. We give them funding to seed their work to provide free services to minority businesses in this country, MBEs. That's the goal. So the first step in my mind is connect with a minority business center operator, connect with a capital readiness center operator to get access to that capital so that they can understand and work with you and coach you along. And the wonderful thing about the Minority Business Development Agency is that we have no cap. We work with small businesses, we work with rather large businesses at every scale of the continuum, because the goal here is wealth creation for these communities. Like I am unabashed about my job. My job is to create wealth in the communities that need it.
And so this center, how is it different from, for instance, like SBA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So their job is to we are all part of the federal government community, but sometimes the job of connecting with an SBA to get your paperwork in order, we're the ones who work very closely with SBA to help make sure that package for that SBA loan is in order. We do the concierge service. We're the ones who are taking you along the continuum. And sometimes our job is to say, SBA is probably good for you, but it might not be the best depending on your business. Gotcha. Maybe there's a different capital provider that's more concessionary, that has better rates, better terms, or the like. Or maybe there's free money of some other sort that's out there for you that you might not want to loan at all. Or maybe there's a VC opportunity for you. Maybe there's a PE opportunity for you. Maybe you don't want to have that level of equity in your firm and you want a partnership. That's their job, to connect you with a broad range of both federal and private sector opportunities that exist.
You dropping gems, brother. Look, guys, not going anywhere. We got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will have more with Mr. Eric Morissette. All right, guys, welcome back to Financial Freestyle. We're here live with Mr. Eric Morissette. Now, listen, man, I think, it's kind of evident, right? I'm a minority. I happen to have a few businesses, right? Yeah. So I would love to actually kind of just walk through the process when it's all said and done, right? Like, how do I go about getting, my minority business certification? Right. If you're in my shoes, right, and you have a business, are you looking for, a loan, or are you looking for grants? Like how would you go about this?
Yeah, I think everybody beyond minority, everybody who has a business is trying to find some free money from somewhere to do something. So we're not trying to hide the ball on any of that stuff. First step, you walk into a minority business center, be open. Be open to sharing your books, your financial information, talking about what you want to get out of the growth of your business or businesses, right? You walk into a business center, you bring your information with you, or be prepared to share your information and talk about what you're doing. So some of your businesses might be eligible for federal contracting. So if you want to get into the federal contracting pipeline, some places both locally and nationally, you might need to be certified to be more eligible or be pulled up to the top of the queue. The eligibility criteria varies depending on what
8A or something.
That's right. Well, it's like the minority women-owned business, a veteran business, like a former person who engaged in a part of a military service.
We had Jackie on. I know a little something.
I love Miss Jackie Robinson, but she's a friend. But the thing is, we're partners in this, right? Absolutely. So we're all working together to make sure that folks who are interested in growing and scaling their businesses can get what they need out of the federal government. So we help you get to determine where you fit into the pie. Depending on your business needs, you might be eligible to federal contracting. One flag that I would raise right now is it's a very unique time in the federal government. I'm a Biden-Harris appointee. We've done some really unprecedented things in the way of capital access, in the way of contracting opportunities. Like before this job, I ran the legislative shop for the U.S. Department of Commerce. We were pretty good. We have over $125 billion in above-base funding. That's the CHIPS and Science Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law that's getting everybody in the country wired, the Inflation Reduction Act. But the federal government in total has over $2 trillion of above-base funding. Those are all opportunities that might exist for your business to get into the line of procurement and the like. So our job is to make sure that you're connected into the OSDBU, Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization Network, so that you can be a part of that procurement chain. And we recently signed an MOU with the Department of Defense, one of the largest buyer of things in the world. That network that you're tapping into by being a part of the community of the Minority Business Development Agency is not just the Department of Commerce, it's not just MBDA, it's the entire range of the federal government and all of our now 50 plus MOU partners that are both private and public.
I got to have you break down what's an MLU.
Oh, fair. It's a memorandum of understanding. This is our ability as an agency to get inside of, work with, coordinate with both private sector actors and other federal agencies. So that we're in partnership now. Like we're now a part of each other's family. So now the Department of Defense procurement folks are in the family of the Minority Business Development Agency. They're trying to grow the amount of minority businesses that are engaged in defense procurement. It's a really big thing for us, but it's a major thing for some of our minority businesses who want to be a part of that chain. We also have one with NASA, the Department of Transportation. We have one with the Divine Nine sororities and fraternities, because like there's great entrepreneurship opportunities that exist along social ladders, right? And sometimes those chains are also networking opportunities to get inside the door for other private sector growth opportunities for your business.
So you mentioned something earlier, right? And I would love to kind of dig into it. You said you are a Biden-Harris appointee.
That's right.
And so when you think about kind of the work you're doing, right? What's to come with the new administration, right? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. The wonderful thing about government service, I talked about being a part of government service my entire life, is that if you build something the right way, it'll always be there in the way that it needs to be for the communities that it's intended to serve. I am very confident in the way that we built this agency. I was a part of crafting the law with really thoughtful lawmakers, with really thoughtful leaders in this space. This is a federal agency that's not going away. The first time in its history, it's never going away unless Congress decides and is working to undo it. What I would flag for folks, that this is not a partisan issue. MBDA was founded 55 years ago by Richard Nixon, and it was passed by a very wide margin of bipartisan colleagues, people who are from both sides of the aisle. What's going to happen with MBDA? We're going to continue to do the work, is what's going to happen. I'm not going to be here anymore. We have amazing federal career public servants that are continuing to do the work. And the truth is we all have a responsibility as citizens of this country to drive that work and that accountability forward. So as a private citizen, I look forward to doing that and continue to drive this work forward in that space. But the work has to continue by law. And that's exactly what I intend for. As I say this, I expect for it to happen as a new administration comes in. There will be changes. It might look a different way. It might be framed in different contexts. But the things that the law says that we need to do, have operating business centers, rural business centers that are connected and anchored in minority serving institutions, HBCUs. That's the thing that's going to have to continue.
Got you. So it's still going to happen. So I love the way you kind of talked about it. Like, you start off first passing a law. Then now everything else is in place, right? And so, as you say, it might look a little different, but it's still going to be the same. So is there no concern about, the amount of capital that is accessible coming down, or is it any concerns there?
Do I have concerns, man? I'm a black man in America. I have all kinds of concerns. I have all kinds of concerns. I think this is the part of the project of democracy in this country that we all need to be a part of, right? As long as we realize and understand that this is not just feel-good work, this is national security work that we're in right now.
Nice.
The ability for us to ensure that the country is postured to compete with the rest of the world requires a vibrant minority business base. The vibrancy of the base is not really at question. The ability of that base to grow at scale and be truly braided into the economy of the country is the problem that we're working against right now. And that's a problem that it truly doesn't know any race. It doesn't know any party affiliation. And the responsibility of any administration will be to do that work. That's why it was such a bipartisan law. I hope and pray that any administration that carries forward this work, I hope and pray that any person that's sitting in my seat understands the importance of that work for the future of our country. But there are going to be some hard choices, and people will have to make sure that people understand the framing of this problem and the framing of the need for our country. Because people can make bad decisions all the time, and people do make bad decisions all the time that undermine our country's interest.
I always like to think that information is the equalizer. And when you think about small businesses, right, the success rate is very low, right? After, I want to say, 5-10 years or something, 60% of small businesses are going to fail, right? And so when you think about what makes a business successful, obviously having, great business plan, have a good competitive advantage. But sometimes in order to truly grow, you need access to capital. I think the average person is either uninformed or scared to actually go forward. And so, right, I have a small business. I've never thought about getting grants, right? And so, are there any measurable statistics that you guys have since you've been part of this administration to say we've grown by, X rate or anything like that?
Yeah, we do have measurable outcomes. Like the footprint of the economic ecosystem for minority businesses in this country have grown exponentially. We measure our service output. We measure how many people we've provided capital to,
Nice.
how many businesses have grown as a consequence of our work. And it's been exponential. We've been only codified for 4 years, but the level of capital access has been many, many multiples of what it was prior to our formal codification. The agency has a responsibility to make all of our work transparent. A part of the responsibility of our agency is to create a data repository, the first data repository for minority business data in this country's history. We're going to announce that, well, maybe I'm announcing it right now. It's going to come out before the end of this year. And I'm proud of that in part because knowledge and information about our ecosystems is the key to our continued growth and scaling. We've got to understand our markets. We've got to understand our disposition and its proximity to the rest of the world. And that's another part of this. Like, we have specialty centers that focus in on the unique capabilities of minority business in this country. We come from a very broad tapestry, including parts of this world that we can penetrate for market growth for this country. So when I say this to say that the information that we're going to be sharing is not going to be only information about the disposition of MBEs, but we're partnering with the International Trade Administration to make sure that we're able to tap into global markets, tapping into the diaspora, tapping into our culture and our history.
So when we think about your business, right, how do we better amplify the resources that you guys have?
Yeah, I think truly the federal government, the government, people who sit in my seat, need to do more to make sure that information is available to folks. We need to grow the amount of people who are engaged in the information sharing. More people need to have conversations like these, but perhaps more importantly, folks need to have conversations with the people in their churches, their synagogues, their mosques, their grocery stores about this opportunity. That's the fundamental of this job, but also the job of all those federal employees, but also all those business centers. They've got to do hard things to help minority businesses succeed. We've got to do more to share the opportunities that exist for entrepreneurs. It's a hard thing to run something. Yeah. You've got to spend some people put their life, their livelihood, their time away from their family, their kids, their loved ones. They don't have time sometimes to look for which federal agency is the one that's responsible for. We've got to be out there finding them, letting them know that we're here to serve and support them. Because when you're struggling every day, you're making hard decisions about whether or not you're going to pay your mortgage or make payroll. Like, you're not really spending a lot of time looking for the Minority Business Development Agency. So we have a responsibility. And I think we've done a really good job of that during the Biden-Harris administration in terms of growing the network. We went from 55, I think, business center to 131 in every state in this country and territory.
That's awesome.
I hope and pray that the future administration grows that many factors forward. I hope and pray that this agency continues to grow until it no longer needs to exist.
That's epic. Last question.
Sure.
What's next for Eric?
More time. Well, what's next for me most immediately is to make sure that all the grant dollars and all the work that I got to do before my time in federal service is done in a way that ensures my child, my family is not disappointed that I did not do all that I could in the time that I had a position of responsibility to do it. So until January 20th, I will be doing every single thing that I can do to make those resources and opportunities available to minority businesses in this country. Thereafter, I'm going to spend a lot more time with my 19-month-old little girl, whom I love, because she deserves more time with daddy.
That's epic, man. I love it. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of Financial Freestyle. We really want to thank you guys for joining, and I truly hope this helps bring you some actual insight when it comes to getting access to capital. Make sure you guys come back next week for a new episode here on Yahoo Finance, Financial Freestyle.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.